Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Okay, students, good morning. Nice meeting you again in Ma'am Eka's subject that is about listening for proficiency tests. Today, we will start on section 4. Okay, Ma'am Eka will greet you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Before we come to our learning that is about IELTS Listening Section 4, Ma'am Eka will deliver about the purposes of our learning today. The purposes are: 1. You can apply some strategies on IELTS Listening Section 4 on doing the test. Secondly, you can apply some tips on doing the test of IELTS Listening Section 4. Thirdly, you can answer some questions based on instruction from audio listening on IELTS Test Section 4. Fourthly, you can write the answers of each instruction on IELTS Listening Test Section 4 appropriately. Okay, IELTS Listening Section 4 is regarded as the most difficult section in the listening test because it requires students to finish 2 parts of questions after playing the recording only once. In most cases, you need to fill in a form first and then do another 5 multiple choice questions. It is also likely to include other question types, such as sentence completion questions. The recording is usually an academic talk about a certain subject, such as biology and history, which makes this section even more difficult. Let's take a look at the IELTS Listening Section 4 for the tips and practice to help you pass the test. And now we come to the characteristics of Listening Section 4. The characteristics are: 1. A lecture or a talk on a course-related topic. 2. Follow the lecture and identify main ideas or key points. 3. The language is quite formal. 4. The speaker usually begins by telling the listeners what they are going to say, and then the main points are clearly identified, often illustrated with examples. 5. You will only hear the recording once. 6. Make sure you check your spelling when you transfer your answers to the answer sheet. 7. The normal rules apply to all parts of the listening test. And now we come to strategies for the listening section 4. The strategies are: 1. Read the title. 2. Read through the questions. 3. Anticipate answers. 4. Guess the gaps. 5. Check your spelling. 6. Avoid distractions. 7. Listen for synonyms. And now we come to the tips for listening section 4. The tips are: 1. Listening section 4 is a lecture. 2. Listening section 4 has a topic related to the key IELTS topics listed here. 1. The environment, like nature, wildlife, farming, pollution, recycling, water, and tourism. 2. The man-made environment, like buildings, cities, housing, development, civilizations, crime, and transport. The 3rd, life, time, leisure, finance, gender, family, health, happiness, and personality. And the fourth, learning, like education, languages, the arts, technology, research, invention, and the future. For the third, listening section 4 is usually a gap fill. And then the fourth, the listening section 4 requires practice with the spelling and word formation. And the other tips for the listening section 4, read the instruction to see how many words you can write. Then look at the layout of the task bullets, points, or continuous notes predict what type of word would fill the gap. Noun, adjective, singular, plural. And then for the exercises on a note completion. For the note completion here, you have to 1. Read the notes and decide what the topic is. 2. Try to rephrase the notes to form a question in your own words for each gap. 3. Note whether there is more than one gap for any of the questions. 4. Complete the notes while you listen. And then for exercises for the classification, what should you do? You should look at the categories in the box, classification question, and decide how they relate to the statements. For the exercises flowchart completion, what should you do? For this kind of test, you should note how the process works, predict sequence words to listen for, in the bracket first, then after that, next, finally, and etc. And now, Mamika will deliver an example of the first version of IELTS listening on section 4. Prepare your note to answer, and this is the practice for all of you, and then we are going to check your answers after you listen to this audio. Mamika will play the audio only once. Listen now.
Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You will hear a university librarian giving a talk to new students. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Okay, are you all settled? Well, first of all, welcome to Cardiff University. I'm here to explain what we can offer you. Now, as a new student at the university, you will probably need some sort of guidance to help you to use the library effectively to study and research. Some of you have asked about a guided tour, but we find this rather muddles people. So, in this first week, we run a series of talks which focus on different aspects of the library and its resources. You'll also find that to get the most out of the library, you really do need to be computer literate. And so all this term we run small classes which will bring you up to speed on how to access the computer-loaded information. Okay, now let me give you an outline of what's available to you. You'll find that the computers are increasingly used as a research tool. Many students do most of their research on the internet, and the library computers are permanently online. Having found what you need, you'll find you can readily save texts on your personal computer space to print off when you need. You might think that it is the fastest way to get information, but the links can be slow. Clearly, you can find lots on there, but much of it is useless information, as it is from highly debatable sources, so be critical. You'll also find that the library has loaded several CD-ROMs onto the computers from specialist reference sources, such as the MLA. It means we can expand what we offer you at very little extra cost, and saves us having to invest in more and more books. The CD-ROMs contain exactly the same information as the reference books, as the two are updated together. Now, most of you will need to refer to journal articles in your work, and you'll find you can also access these online, and we encourage you to do so. Clearly, some of you will find the printed version more accessible as it sits on the shelves, but I'm afraid the intention is to phase these out eventually. However, you will still be able to print off a version of the text rather than photocopying the journal pages. So you must get used to working online. Naturally, we do still have the full range of classic reference books, additional to the CD-ROMs for you to use, and there are several copies of each one. This is because some of you may prefer to borrow a book rather than sit in the library. There is a restricted loan time on these, so that they are not missing from the shelves for too long. Although there is a section manager for each part of the library, they are very busy, and so if you do get stuck looking for things, you should ask the relevant cataloguing assistant. As your training supervisor, I just oversee your induction and will not be around after this initial week. Some of you may be interested to know that the library is offering specialised training sessions on writing a dissertation. Obviously, this is not relevant to those of you who are undergraduates, it is just for postgraduates. Your department will discuss the planning stage of the dissertation, i.e. what you're going to do with you, and we will focus on the structure of it. However, the training will also include some time on the computers. I realise most of you know how to organise files, but we can show you the different ways to run data programs. Your tutors will tell you at the outset how to set out the chapters they require, but you will need to ask them how they would like you to organise the bibliography, because it varies depending on your subject area. When you've got something together, the trainer here will look through the draft version for you to see if it's okay. And one final point, for those of you who have registered from abroad, we can offer individual sessions on dissertations if you feel you need them. If you require language lessons, then they are available from the International Centre next to the Law Department.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
After you listen to the first audio, and now you have to check your answers based on the first audio for number 31 up to 40, because the questions here mostly about multiple choice, but the multiple choice will be in different version. For the first is choose A, B, C, by one question and then 3 choices. But for question 37 up to 40 will be in different version for choices. Okay, you have to take a look on the question sheet. Okay, and now after you check your answers, how many mistakes have you made? Now we are going to listen again for the practice for the second audio, and will be different version. And now it's time for you to practice again. Listen now.
Now turn to section 4 on page 14. Section 4. You will hear a speaker giving a talk about some recent research about unusual life forms. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40 on pages 14 and 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the 6th of our ecology evening classes. Nice to see you all again. As you know from the programme, today I want to talk to you about some research that is pushing back the frontiers of the whole field of ecology. And this research is being carried out in the remoter regions of our planet, places where the environment is harsh and, until recently, it was thought that the conditions couldn't sustain life of any kind. But life forms are being found, and these have been grouped into what is now known as extremophiles. That is, organisms that can survive in the most extreme environments. And these discoveries may be setting a huge challenge for the scientists of the future, as you'll see in a minute. Now, the particular research I want to tell you about was carried out in Antarctica, one of the coldest and driest places on Earth. But a multinational team of researchers from the US, Canada, and New Zealand recently discovered colonies of microbes in the soil there where no one thought it was possible. Interestingly enough, some of the colonies were identified as a type of fungus called Bouveria bassiana, a fungus that lives on insects. But where are the insects in these utterly empty regions of Antarctica? The researchers concluded that this was clear evidence that these colonies were certainly not new arrivals. They might have been there for centuries, or even millennia, possibly even since the last ice age. Can you imagine their excitement? Now, some types of microbes had previously been found living just a few millimeters under the surface of rocks, porous Antarctic rocks. But this was the first time that living colonies had been found surviving, relatively deeply in the soil itself, several centimeters down, in fact. So, the big question is, how can these colonies survive there? Well, we know that the organisms living very near the rock's surface can still be warmed by the sun, so they can survive in their own microclimate. And this keeps them from freezing during the day. But this isn't the case for the colonies that are hidden under the soil. In their research paper, this team suggested that the very high amounts of salt in the soil might be the clue, because this is what is preventing essential water from freezing. The team found that the salt concentration increased the deeper down they went in the soil. But while they had expected the number of organisms to be fewer down there, they actually found the opposite. In soil that had as much as 3,000 parts of salt per million, relatively high numbers of microbes were present, which seems incredible. But the point is that at those levels of salt, the temperature could drop to minus 56 degrees before frost would cause any damage to the organisms. This relationship between microbes and salt, at temperatures way below the normal freezing point of water, is a really significant breakthrough. As you all know, life is dependent on the availability of water in liquid form, and the role of salt at very low temperatures could be the key to survival in these kinds of conditions. Now, the process at work here is called supercooling, and that's usually written as one word, but it isn't really understood as yet. So, there's a lot more for researchers to work on. However, the fact that this process occurs naturally in Antarctica may suggest that it might occur in other places with similar conditions, including on our neighbouring planet, Mars. So, you can start to see the wider implications of this kind of research. In short, it appears to support the growing belief that extraterrestrial life might be able to survive the dry, cold conditions on other planets after all. Not only does this research produce evidence that life is possible there, it's also informing scientists of the locations where it might be found. So all of this might have great significance for future unmanned space missions. One specialist on Mars confirms the importance.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the separate answer sheet.
Okay, students, enough for your job is about answering for the second version of the audio. Please write down your answer on the comment of this video. This is our learning today. I hope that you can learn more about listening section 4 from IELTS test. Thank you very much for your attention. See you again next week on the different material. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.